In this video, I'll show you how to create a slide that you would include in a strategy presentation. A strategy slide is basically a synthesis of your insight. It's your way of distilling your perspective into a clear message that you can deliver to your audience. For a strategy slide to be effective, it needs to be both visually interesting and it needs to be able to clearly communicate a takeaway or a point of view. And the way you create a page and distill your points will determine what your audience thinks of your strategy. If it's messy, whether the quality of the visuals are poor or if the writing is unclear, then those qualities will be imputed, so to speak, onto the strategy and you will lose your audience. And the same holds true when you get it right and create a good page. People can easily follow your logic and understand the perspective and by extension your strategy. And the best part of all this is that it only really takes a little bit of extra effort on top of the slide that you already created anyways to multiply its impact. If you like this sort of strategy content, then I encourage you to check out overnightstrategist.com to get access to tools and training to help you with strategic thinking and storytelling. Let's now take a look at how we can build a high quality strategy slide. There are 3 simple steps. Step 1, the takeaway message. The first thing you need to do when you create your page is ask the question of what do I want my audience to walk away with when they read the page? What is the one message that I want to land? Everything you do on the page is in the service of the main overall point. When you start to put in a bunch of different or conflicting messages, then you end up with a confusing page that your audience will find it hard to consume. Before you can actually create the page itself, you can simply write your headline message and the bullet points, which are all your supporting points. And then this will ensure you have a message that's clear and also a message that fits into the overall story. Your main point will show up primarily in the headline of the page, and it'll be supported in the sub-headlines and the bullet point commentary of the page. For the message to land, there needs to be a hierarchy in the way you communicate your message, which is typically done in 3 levels of the hierarchy, starting with the headline as the governing point, followed by the sub-headline as your supporting points, and then followed by your bullet point commentary, which is the detail. This communication structure will help you deliver your message clearly so your audience can read the page and know exactly what you're trying to say and why you're saying it. Let's take a look at an example that we'll use in each of the steps. Let's say we have a footwear business that sells sneakers and sandals, and this business is experiencing a slowdown in sales. We perform a bunch of analysis and investigation, and we've come up with a turnaround strategy. Now, the page we want to work on is a page that sets things up and describes the problem. For this page, we want to communicate a decline in sales, the drivers of the decline, and why this might be a longer-term issue. So our main message here is there's a big decline of monthly sales revenue in Q4. Monthly sales on average fell 50% from $723,000 to $362,000 in average in Q4 and has remained at these depressed levels. And the drivers for the decline are a weak sneaker launch, price increases, issues with the sales partner channel. And those are some of our explanatory points for the main headline, which is a decline in the sales. And depending on the strategy story, each of these points could actually be a page in its own right, if we ever wanted to double click on each of the points. So that's the summary points of the analysis that we want to include in the storyline. Let's move to the next step. Step 2, the hero visual. Once you're clear on the message, you need to build the hero visual. This is the visual that'll deliver your message, which is the first thing the audience will see when they get to your page. Your visual is either going to be a diagram that explains a concept, or it's going to be a chart that describes your data. For example, a diagram could show how a customer navigates from one channel to the next, and a data chart could be a comparison chart or a trend chart. And you're using some form of visual to help you communicate the message. And in your visual, you want to include some big callouts to help drive the point home and help the audience understand what's actually going on in this page. Continuing on from our example of the footwear sales, we need to pick a hero visual for our page. Since we are looking at a decline in sales, we can either pick a comparison chart that compares one point in time to another, but what might be better is a trend chart over the last 12 months with a clear call out on the sharp decline. So let's build a 12-month trend chart with some dividers for each quarter. Let's also split the bar between sneakers and sandals so it's clear that the sales is attributed to the sneaker line of products. We see the drop in sales in Q4, but let's also now see the before and after to really bring attention to the severity of the drop. We can do this by putting in a before line for the last 9 months, which shows the monthly average in the 700 plus range, and after line in Q4, which shows the drop to the 300 plus range, which supports the narrative of the 50% sharp and at this moment sustained decline. We make sure everything on the chart is labeled correctly and communicates information easily. When it comes to building a visual, this isn't the only way to do it. Here are a couple more alternatives to the visual with some minor changes. On the left-hand side, you have the same visual as before, but we've now removed the before and after and the line and replaced it with the quarterly averages in the labels. And here we can compare Q4 to any quarter before it to validate the drop in sales. On the right-hand side, we stick with the same general visual, but we simplify it further. We remove the stack bar and replace it with one bar type, which represents total footwear sales. Then we include a 3-month simple moving average line to show a smooth out trend line, and we add a simple callout box. And all these visuals, they communicate the same basic message, and you can create the visual that best helps tell your story in your voice and to your specific audience. So now we have our hero visual, which helps us have a conversation with our audience. Step 3, the slide structure. Now that you have a key message and a hero visual, you now need to use a structure or a page layout to deliver the message. The layout determines how the audience will consume the points you're making on the page. The main elements of a page is the headline, the subheadlines, and the hero visuals and the bullet points. And the eye tends to follow a visual hierarchy as well, which is the hero visual, and then the headline, and then the subheadline, and then the bullet point detail, which is basically from the largest visual element to the smallest visual element. That means you want to spend a good amount of time on the headline and the visual because that consumes the lion's share attention on the page. Now let's bring it all together into an example. The slide structure we can use with our footwear example is a simple split page. We'll have our headline at the top and 2 blocks. Each block has a subheadline. The block on the left has our hero visual, and the block on the right has our supporting points. Now, that feels like the most natural way for our audience to consume the information, and that's the layout we'll use for this example. Let's see what the finished slide looks like. You can see our eye goes first to the big visual. We see the trend change in the chart and also the callouts with the before-after numbers. We then look at the headline to confirm the takeaway message for the page. And then we go to the left subheadline to understand it a bit more. And then we go to the right-hand side to look at each of the drivers with the bolded parts indicating the important point of each driver. Now our audience walks away knowing that this is what's going on with our sales, the big decline, what's causing it, which are the drivers, and why it's an issue, the lack of the recovery. And you can see how we unpack more and more of the detail of what's going on using the visual hierarchy, which guides our audience in how they consume information. They can get the gist of the page with the hero visual and the headline, and then they can get a deeper understanding when they read the commentary points. And there you have it. This is how you can create a strategy page and immediately lift the quality of your presentation using these 3 simple steps. Hope you get a chance to use this technique in your strategy deck so you can land the message with your audience in a very compelling way. Thanks, and see you soon.